Hi, I'm Grabby-Cat, I do stuff, and this is going to be kind of a different video from my usual stuff. Instead of me just kind of rambling while playing video games, this is going to be a new series I'm starting called Talkin Bout, where it's more structured, scripted, and has an overall better flow, instead of me just, babbling like I'm doing right now. So, this first episode is all about The Bad Batch. I hope you enjoy it. There will be spoilers ahead for the entirety of Bad Batch Season 1. Star Wars The Bad Batch has just wrapped up its first season, with a second recently confirmed for a planned 2022 release date. From my experience within the fandom, the reaction to the show overall has been mostly positive. Many, including myself, were excited to explore the time immediately after Revenge of the Sith from the perspective of the clones, who could offer an in-depth look at the birth of the Empire from the ground floor, so to speak. For the most part, the show has been successful in that respect, as we see the phasing out of clones, implementation of TK Trooper replacements, and ultimately the destruction of Tipoca City, truly putting an end to the era of the Republic. However, while the show is successful at displaying galactic change on a grand scale, it's the smaller things that Bad Batch struggles with, namely its main cast. In my opinion, there is one character who serves as my biggest problem with this first season, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Season 1 runs rampant with cameos, and while it's exciting to see characters like Hera and Gregor again, they accentuate the crippling issue with our leads. The Batch themselves need far more development. Each of the Batch is given their own niche to fill, and they very rarely stray from it. Wrecker is the big guy who hits things, Tech is the smart boy, Hunter is the leader, and Echo is just kind of there. And then there's Omega. When I saw the initial trailer for the show, I was very skeptical of her character. Oh great, another plucky young sidekick to come along on adventures and need rescuing. When the first episode came, I braced myself and waited for my enthusiasm to grind to a halt. But I was wrong. Omega is the heart and soul of the team. Instead of being a whiny, self-absorbed little brat, she's a genuinely good person who's empathetic, intelligent, and kind. She acts as the moral compass for the rest of the Batch, but not in a self-righteous or irritating way. What Omega does is tell them what they already know, to do the right thing, regardless of the risks. Her development from being a naive child on Kamino who had never so much as seen dirt, to becoming a member of a commando squad wielding a laser bow she took from a slave master, has been quite the ride. Her escape from Fennec and Cad Bane? Fantastic. Activating the training droids on Kamino to help her brothers? Incredible. Omega is not the problem. So, what about the rest of the squad? Well, Hunter serves as the closest father figure to Omega, as well as being the leader of the group, so he gets a fair bit of screen time and development. Tech is typically relegated to technobabble and piloting the shuttle, but his unusual mannerisms result in some pretty good laughs, especially when he plays off of Wrecker. As for the big man, he doesn't get much, but the arc where his inhibitor chip starts to activate until it culminates in him going full-on Terminator was a sight to see. Then we get to Echo. It pains me to say that Echo is highly underused. Whereas each member of Clone Force 99 has their own specialization, Echo doesn't really fit. This makes sense in the context of the Star Wars universe, as he was not an enhanced clone, but was simply too damaged after his incident in the Clone Wars to return to normal. However, in terms of this being a series, Echo should have filled a new role in the squad. He should be given a way in which he excels above the other members, thereby making him more valuable to the team. Now, he has his brain implant and scomp link, making him ideal for hacking, but Tech is the tech-savvy hacker of the team, so where does Echo fit? Infiltration? No, I think Hunter's got that covered. Demolitions? No, Wrecker's destructive capabilities are unmatched. Echo needs his own place in the team, and until he gets one, he's always going to feel like the odd man out, which is especially jarring for a team made up of misfits. So, is my beef with the Bad Batch with Echo, then? Well, no. Despite being underused, Echo still has a few moments where he shines, usually with a grumpy, dry one-liner. When he really excels, though, is any episode involving Rex. When his former captain is on the scene, Echo suddenly remembers that he's a character we've known and rooted for since 2008, and he regains his personality. So then, who is it? Which character is it that I take such issue with? Well, it's the only one left. It's Crosshair. But maybe not for the reason you'd think. Before Echo joined the batch, Crosshair was my favorite. I thought his mutation, armor, and skills were the most impressive, and I loved his cold but often jokingly sarcastic personality. When he was featured very little in the marketing for the show, I figured he just wasn't a popular enough character, and so they were displaying their more marketable faces more prominently. But when episode 1 rolled around and Crosshair whispered those now infamous words, "Good soldiers follow orders," everything clicked into place. Crosshair's struggle against the chip was heartbreaking, as you could see that he, like Rex in the final season of the Clone Wars, was fighting against it, but not even sure what it was he was fighting against. The scene in the Kaminoan prison cell where Omega recognizes what's wrong and gently tells Crosshair that it isn't his fault gets even his cold exterior to soften, if only for a moment. Once Crosshair defects, this is where my issues begin, but not with the sniper himself. You see, I believe that Crosshair is the weakest point of the show, but not in terms of his character. On the contrary, it's my belief that Crosshair is among the best, if not the best, characters in the show. My issue, and the entire reason I wanted to talk about the Bad Batch, is how his betrayal was handled by the other members of Clone Force 99. Crosshair's turn should have been the driving force of the season, the emotional gut punch that the batch never really shake off. Crosshair was an integral part of their team, together with the squad since their creation. All the clones are considered brothers to each other, but the batch saw themselves as different, meaning that even in a sea of millions of clones, they stood alone. And so because of that, they were very close to each other and closed off from the regs. So why is it that when Crosshair is turned to the Empire against his will, do the batch immediately see him as an enemy and not a friend in need of saving? Crosshair's behavioral shift caused him to do terrible things, against not just his brothers, but civilians as well. But it was as Omega said, it wasn't his fault. For the first few episodes, whenever Crosshair is mentioned or some of his equipment is found, there's an uncomfortable silence, and the batch are very clearly visibly upset at the situation. But these moments are few and far between, and they get less frequent as the series progresses. By the time the show reaches the rendezvous with Rex on Braca, Crosshair is simply considered an enemy by the batch. They talk about him as though he's a killing machine nemesis, rather than their lost brother who can't control himself. To their credit, they tell Crosshair his behavior is due to the inhibitor chip, but this conversation only lasts a few moments before the shooting resumes. When they blow the engine casing on the crashed Venator, they know full well that Crosshair's in the line of fire and likely to be barbecued, but they push forward anyways, because at this point, they see it as him or them. And as we see later in the series, this lack of empathy results in Crosshair feeling immense resentment towards his brothers. In part 1 of the season finale, we finally get a meaningful confrontation between Crosshair and his former comrades. His one-on-one conversation with Hunter hints that he might be more aware than previously thought, as he coldly states that the batch don't leave one of their own behind, most of the time. This is fantastic development for Crosshair, as it suggests that he's been harboring these feelings for quite some time, and they've been festering inside his head and driving his single-minded goal of capturing Clone Force 99. Over the course of the series, we assumed that this was to kill them because of his pride, but in the finale, we see that it was because he genuinely wanted to reconnect with his brothers, the only people who would truly accept him for who he is. But, like he tells them later on, they never even attempted to rescue him. Not once did they try to save the lost member of their squad, but instead said, "Oh well, guess he's just evil now." When the batch is on Ryloth and they learn that Crosshair's nearby, they simply sigh and state, "Oh, of course he is," instead of thinking that this would be a great opportunity to extract him and remove his chip, like the squad did for themselves a few episodes back. For whatever reason, it seems they consider Crosshair a lost cause, not even worth fighting for, easy to abandon and neglect. When the sniper addresses them all in Kamino's training room, he whispers that he would give his squad mates the one thing that they never gave him: a chance. The venom in Crosshair's words is palpable, and we really get the sense that this is a man whose closest family essentially left him for dead, considered him an enemy to be beaten, not a comrade in need of saving. Crosshair watched as they saved Omega, Hera, Sid, Gregor, and even a separatist senator, risking life and limb for them, but they wouldn't lift a finger for him until he had a gun pointed at their heads. The batch gave up on Crosshair, on their brother. They act as though they didn't want to save him. It was like they wanted to forget him. And even if their harsh treatment of him was part of the show's overall plot, then I feel this was a weak creative choice. Other than the very first episode and the two-part finale, Crosshair serves as a secondary antagonist to the Empire as a whole, or whoever it is the batch are fighting in the smaller filler episodes, be they criminals, slavers, or bugs. We had an episode where bugs were the main threat. For that episode, Crosshair plays second fiddle to bugs. Yikes. Now, I know I'm being harsh, and that the show has yet to find its footing. Like almost all Star Wars shows that came before it, even the almighty Clone Wars, the first season is kind of weak. The Bad Batch is no exception, with a fantastic first episode, a wonderfully emotional finale, and a whole lot of drag in the middle. I feel that with a more cohesive plot centered around a single event or character, such as in The Mandalorian's quest to find a home for Grogu, the Bad Batch will feel more focused and be less likely to fall into those filler episode traps that the first season hit. Overall, I did enjoy this season. Every Friday I would wake up and think, oh boy, time for more Bad Batch. But just because I like something doesn't mean I can't wish it was better, and ultimately the treatment of Crosshair as an antagonist was not handled in the best way. His appearances in the show were somewhat sparse and typically brief unless it was the beginning or end of the season. While Crosshair's development is substantial, it's done in so few episodes that it feels as though it's all been backloaded into the finale. His reveal that he had his chip removed, most likely when the Empire was treating his post-barbecue injuries on Braca, was fantastic, showing that his redemption would not be as simple as taking the thing out of his head and everything being magically fixed. Looking back, we can see that his behavior was significantly less vicious after this incident, going from telling his elite squad to aim for Omega in shootouts and flamethrowering civilians, to telling his squad to send Omega off-planet once she had been captured. The Crosshair we once knew was beginning to return, but even without the chip's influence, he was still hurt by his comrades' decision to leave him behind. He was burned by them, both mentally and physically, but he still offered them a place alongside him, because deep down, under all that conditioning, brainwashing, and anger, he loved them. Crosshair could have, and in my opinion should have, been the focal point of this season. His betrayal is tragic to not only his squad mates, but to himself as well, as he was unable to control himself, at least while the chip was present. His personal connection to our main characters should have made him a far more menacing villain, as he would know all of their strategies, and so every confrontation would be like a chess match between equally skilled opponents. Every battle against him should have been an emotional ordeal, as Clone Force 99 wouldn't want to harm their brother, but Crosshair would still be programmed to kill them against his will, meaning that they would have to run. I would have much preferred a season where the batch were on the run from a Terminator-style Crosshair, hunting them across the galaxy, rather than a season of doing errands for Sid. With a second season already in production, it's fair to say that the Bad Batch will continue to grow, change, and improve, just like all the Star Wars shows that have come before it. I've been very critical of the show in this video, but I'd like to end by singing its praises. Visually, the show is absolutely gorgeous, a real step up from even the Clone Wars Season 7. From the stormy seas of Kamino to the dense forests of Darrow, the show is a treat for the eyes in every way. The animation is smooth and polished to perfection, and the characters emote and talk with the fluidity and grace of live action. On the topic of the voice acting, D. Bradley Baker deserves immense recognition for his ability to voice a majority of the main cast, making each one sound distinct with their own tones and inflections. The music consists of a wonderful mix of prequel songs, original trilogy songs, and brand new compositions that all set the scenes beautifully and complement the incredible animation. This show is by no means bad, and I only criticize it in this way because I can see so much potential in it going forward. Let's hope that this next season, just like Crosshair, hits its mark. Thanks for watching.